All right. So here we are to our favorite work day of the month. We are here, Beers with Engineers, session number 35. We're one away from 3 years worth of episodes, which is an amazing thing to think about. And we're really pleased that we had so many great people joining us today. So we'll start with the safe harbor slide, then we'll talk a little bit about where we're at. So safe harbor, this kind of actually has to count a little extra special today because we have both ServiceNow and Tanium folks on the phone. So some of the things that we might say here may be not released or not ever be released or be released with slightly different functionality than we talk about today. So please don't make purchasing decisions based on any forward-looking statements that occur today. Phew. Okay, moving on. So pretty quick, pretty informal agenda. Again, I think we've got some new folks for us, so we'll run through this a little more than we do normally. We talk a little bit about why we're here, why Will and I started this process off, talk about who we are, who the team is. We're gonna have a couple of updates about the show, and then we're gonna dive into Tanium and the integrations between Tanium and ServiceNow and the capabilities that all that brings to the table. And we're really excited about it. This is actually part two of a two-part show. The first part was actually released over on the Tanium Tech Talks channel, which Ashley hosts. And the link to that channel and the playlist is actually going to be in the slide deck that we send out in the show wrap-up notes. So really excited to dive in today. And then as usual, we will wrap up with some Q&A at the end. So why did Will and I start this? Years ago, we were looking around and we realized that there was not a ton of information around the intersection between the ServiceNow ecosystem and the cloud native architecture, cloud native world. And we thought not only was there not a lot of information, but there was not a lot of community engagement and people talking about it and talking to one another about the struggles that they're going through and how things are going. So we decided, hey, let's build this community and bridge that gap. And most importantly, it's all about all the amazing people that both join us on the show every month and also watch the recordings on YouTube. So thanks everybody for that. So, who are we? So, my name is Mike Gallagher. I'm an ITOM pre-sale specialist here at ServiceNow. I am a nerd going on 3 decades in the tech industry now, which is a little crazy to think about. And I just love solving
Hello.
business problems with tech. And if you if you're not talking now, mute up, please. And then um, I spend a lot of time playing board games, hanging out with my amazing kiddos, and playing and training a lot of jujitsu. And today I was lucky enough to find a a Shell Shock Imperial Stout, which is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme Imperial Stout. It's with pecans, fudge, caramel, and vanilla. I'm really excited about this. And it's actually from Martin Brewing down in Fort Worth, Texas. Martin House Brewing, my bad. So really excited to try it. Will, over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, before I go, Chris is asking what the ABV is on your beverage.
10%.
Whoa.
Yeah. Uh,
Oh boy.
this is a lighter one for me. A lot of the stouts are like 12 to 15.
Yikes. Hey everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Will Hallam. I'm a solution consultant focusing on ITOM at ServiceNow. Similar to Mike, been doing technology things for like 3 decades. Lately, just focusing on a lot of cloud native stuff and just automating the stuff that's been over the years has been just drudgery, repetitive, um, tedious tasks. And I just enjoy the heck out of being able to automate that and make everybody's life easier. My spare time, I like to hang with my family. I play some pickup hockey and some video games. Today, I'll be enjoying a pocket wrench hazy pale ale from a nearby brewery, Industrial Arts Brewing in Beacon, New York.
Nice. So why don't we hand it over to Jeremy Knutson to introduce himself from Tanium. and then we'll roll through and we'll wrap up with Ashley so he can go right into the intro.
Hey, folks, and thank you, Mike and Will, for allowing us to be a part of this today and just the dialogue. Being a voyeur, first time, all long time listener, first time presenter. It's fantastic. You one up me. I thought I was going to be the heavy hitter today, Mike. I've got the Big Mango Beer Hug Imperial IPA from Goose Island out of Chicago. It's 9.9. So I thought I was going to be the heavy hitter today, Mike, but you beat me to it. So.
Awesome, Brandon.
I will kick this off. I've been waiting to open my beer here. Brandon Wolf here with Tanium. Helped work on our strategy side as part of our partnership here with ServiceNow, and have spent the entirety of my career, last 15 years, working in the IT service management and asset management space. So really excited to be here today, and we are going with this is Hold On to Sunshine from Treehouse Brewing. Uh, Made my pilgrimage to Treehouse a few months ago and stocked up on my annual supply because you can only buy beers at the brewery, not in any stores or restaurants. So once a year we have a company event there, and I buy about an annual supply and bring it back in a duffel bag.
Ha, love it. Awesome. Ashley.
All right. So Ashley McGlone from Tanium, just about to cross 8 years at Tanium. Prior to that is about 8 years at Microsoft. Prior to that, Toyota and a bunch of other places. So yeah, but prior to that, 1982 Commodore VIC-20. So been rocking tech for about 40 years or so here. And today I'm on the keto diet. So I am doing a Dr. Pepper Zero, strawberries and cream. Very rare to see one of those in the wild. I tried the vanilla cream and this was better. The strawberry was much better. So anyway, yeah. So what do I do at Tanium? Among other things, I run the Tanium Tech Talks show for now about 4.5 years. We've been going strong and presenting basically what we're releasing at Tanium, helping people be successful and get their job done quicker so they can go home at the end of the day knowing they did well. And Tanium helps them automate a lot of that in the realm of endpoint management. So you got some links coming up in the notes later you can get to check out. We've got a lot of ServiceNow integration videos over there for you to check out. So you want me to roll right into the demo here?
Yep, go for it.
All right. All right. So what is Tanium? That's what I'm going to talk about here real quick. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen
Go for it.
while I find my mouse pointer, which screen it's on here. And I'll just do a quick demo just to kick things off here. So what is Tanium? Tanium is a real-time endpoint management platform. And to us, an endpoint would be Windows, Mac, Linux, even some old Solaris and AIX. So we support a lot of different operating systems and go pretty far back on that. And what we do is we manage those endpoints at scale in real time. And that's really the secret sauce of Tanium. And we've got this question bar interface. We like to say it's like a Google search engine for your enterprise. You can ask any question, get the response back literally in seconds. And I know that this audience is used to a CMDB, a database, but this is real time coming straight off the endpoint. Anywhere in the world, they've got an IP address. So of course we can warehouse that and ship it anywhere else like ServiceNow, but the strength of our platform is that real-time data at scale. So we have customers with literally hundreds of thousands of endpoints that all respond in seconds, even less than a second sometimes. So as we think about like the layers in a cake here, right? So that's the foundational layer of Tanium, is this real-time endpoint management platform. And imagine any like hundreds and hundreds of data points, whatever you want to know about a machine, you can get that data back really fast. So on top of that, then we have built a similar to ServiceNow with a platform that has a series of modules. We have these use cases that we've built out on top of that real-time platform to cover anything from security and ops, risk, whatever you're doing in IT with endpoints, servers, and workstations. You can do that with Tanium for the most part. So we've got everything from bare metal imaging to get the machine into the system, right? through asset inventory, which is really popular with this crowd. And then we've got incident response, vulnerability management, performance management, like real-time telemetry. Imagine like open task manager on 1,000 machines at once. So that kind of thing where you can see what's running, what's the hashes on those processes running in memory right now. We got like DEX, like digital employee experience, where you can do surveys to your endpoints. We got policy management. You know, there's just like this whole long patching, third-party app deployment. And what I want to show you just for fun here. So imagine all those, that real-time ability to not only query an endpoint, but to take action on it. And now what you can do in all these different use cases, these modules. And one I want to show you real quick here, just for grins. We released this recently, is we call it confidence score. So imagine when you are deploying software, it's a roll of the dice sometimes. I mean, I'm speaking to the audience that runs change controls for a living. So you're rolling the dice when you push out an application. But imagine if you could know before you pushed out that application, is this going to be a good day or a bad day, right? So here we've got a sample size of 48,000 endpoints across all of Tanium globally. And we've had 0 application crashes, no significant memory or CPU impact, 96% installation success. You're probably going to have a good day when you push out that application. And you can even set it to automatically just push these things out through your deployment rings, right? But then down here, let's take a look at Acrobat Reader. We got 4% application crashes, 39% memory spikes. So we got this telemetry, again, this live telemetry across your environment. So this is kind of that next layer over top of the modules where we now have automation. Just like you've got workflows and playbooks in ServiceNow, we've got workflows in Tanium. We call these automate playbooks. So we can do things like, patching of SQL clusters, multiple step operations that involve steps from multiple modules. That's what automate does for us, whether it's patching or any type of action you want to take in sequence across multiple machines. So we've got the automation piece. And then up here in the corner, you'll see these little notifications that pop up in the top. This is called guide, and a subset of that's called guardian. So you've got the org chart standing in the cube, is the old way we used to say it, but nowadays either like everybody's hitting you on Slack or Teams, right? And like, hey, did you see the news this morning about the 0 day? Well, you just open your Tanium console, and okay, let's say we're talking about Windows 10 end of support, for example, and somebody's like, hey, I got to know, where are we on this? And you can pull up this dashboard in a flash that's got already hand curated advice. Think about a junior SOC analyst or a junior patch admin, right? Somebody who's junior. And so you've got all this. Even if you're senior, it saves you time going to look up all the links and everything you need to know to do this activity. And so not only what this does is it gives you contextualized information about whatever that current headline is that's going on in the industry right now with your data. So here's the industry information, but here's what it looks like in your environment. And then as you remediate whatever this item is, you can track the status over time. And we even have action buttons in here for whatever it is that you're troubleshooting. Another good one down here is like this Windows SMB vulnerability, right? You see this pop in the news. Hey, what's going on in our environment? What do I need to read to be informed? There it is. It's all right there. And I scroll through, I've got all my environment context, and I can hit the button to go fix it, right? So that's what we call Guardian with these live alerts in your console. Yeah.
What do you mean SMB has failures? That never happens. There's never security issues with SMB.
Yeah. So you think about these tiers then. So you've got this real-time messaging, visibility and control platform at scale anywhere in the world, right? Windows, Mac, and Linux. And then you stack on that all these different use cases that span with a single agent that's throttled, right? And then on top of that, you stack this workflow ability and the new AI capabilities that we're layering on top of that for automation. And so that's where when we talk about strategic platform partnerships, Tanium is a platform that's the eyes and hands of ServiceNow, which is the brain, is the way we like to talk about it. We talked about it on the last episode. So that's the kind of stuff that we demo over on the Tech Talk show.
Awesome.
That's awesome, Ashley. And I guess you get a hand over to me. So can I grab the ball here and let's just kind of keep going? I love the dialogue we've got coming up in the chat too. So please keep that coming. And I know, Q&A, we can dive in a little bit further. So I'm going to spend, if it's okay, maybe 7 to 9 minutes just walking through a high level of that integration. So as Ashley was just walking through, we often think about where people want to live, meet them where they are, that environment. We find that the data feed that's coming in from Tanium into ServiceNow is that high fidelity rich data. So when we're looking at that high fidelity and rich data that we're populating, we want to look at it also from a perspective of some of the integration layers. Ashley mentioned that. Brandon will be talking about it as well. I'll hand off to Will here in a second to actually get into the nuts and bolts of what this is. But quite simply, and if you saw the previous episode or if you're a newcomer, your.servicenow.com/Tanium. It is also something that you'll be hearing recently or coming up here very soon, is that we're both customers of each other outside of a strategic partnership. And we think that that's really, really valuable. Also, even from, if you're familiar with like the now on now based stories, we really feel like that is a really imperative component. But all of the deeper dive, high level information, I want to make sure you know where this is at. So we can put these as links. And I know that you'll have this as a follow up. Really good spot. But I want to begin on really where the integrations come into. I'll typically go to the store.servicenow.com. And for today, one of the things, and this really dovetails again back to what Ashley was just highlighting. So Tanium, you're going to find the SDK, the software development kit, the Tanium Autonomous, AEM, Autonomous Endpoint Agent, software management, live UI. I'll walk through that here in a second in the demonstration as well. And I'll stay within ServiceNow the entire time. So imagine from an operator's perspective, like you, Ashley, like you may be a Tanium operator within an organization. And I may be a platform owner, an asset owner, or an ITOM owner, or a CMDB owner within the ServiceNow construct. Fair statement, Ashley? So I might not be a day in, day out inside of Tanium, because Tanium is really going to be on those endpoints. So I might need to be orchestrating the workflows through the brains component of it. So I might have different scenarios and use cases. I did see this in the chat as well. The service graph connector for Tanium. Yes, Will, I think you already answered that. This is that connective tissue that is going to bring forth what I'm about to walk through here in just a second. So if you're familiar with performance analytics, I can go through the dashboards. The data is the data is the data. And if you've known me or seen me present when I was at ServiceNow on things like Transformation Tuesday, I was a big proponent of a couple of things. Terminology matters. Having a good lexicon. We've all got a lot of acronyms, so understanding what those outcomes are really important. But from a platform or performance analytics perspective, you'll see all of those integrations are coming in. I've obviously marked them as a favorite. I also am logged in here as myself as a system administrator, but granting access to the views, the personas, the roles that you need. I am just in here looking at also one way that you can look introspectively into all of my current hardware and inventory count. Ashley, again, was mentioning that these are coming in seconds. We might even see, and if I refresh, this count may change. It may go down. Sometimes during a presentation, I've seen it go to 247, 248, 255. It's always throttling based on what kind of constructs we're needing. Again, and Brandon, you could probably dive in on this, but we're common service data model compliant. So when we start to look at those components, and I know Will's going to be diving into kind of even the deeper weeds of the service graph connector, it becomes important because now that data is merged from patching for IT operations, patching for vulnerabilities, software usage and metering and utilization so that you can use a workflow to reclaim software, push or deploy as you've got the guard, you've got that insight to deploy. So the hands being Tanium and the brains and the workflow also from an agentic or even an AI-based construct begins with the data foundation of having good quality data in. Now, drilling into one of these, of course, I think we're all ServiceNow familiar, going right on into the tables, right on into the details. And in this in particular environment or instance that has been built, this is just a service graph connector, Tanium ServiceNow feed. You can see on the right side of my screen here, I'm bringing in that discovery source. However, what might also really be interesting for me to want to do is look in perspective with all that real-time data. I'm going to go and grab, I think it's 2604 I might want right here. Obviously, I'm bringing in CPU speed, all of that, those metrics, that data I can bring in. But if I go look at 2604 as an example here, and I bring that up, of course, all the requisite details you want to see that's also being piped in through the Service Graph connector, file systems, storage devices, running processes, how many software installations, all of that data, again, being fed in real time. But I wanted to end on this piece that I think is also really critical from an integration. As I mentioned earlier, Ashley, I'm going to coordinate and work with you, but I don't need to be living inside of Tanium all day long. I want to live in my world of ServiceNow, and I want to launch Tanium Live UI. Tanium Live UI is on that endpoint going to be returning and gathering all of that endpoint data in real time. And it can also be collapsed in where I can start to query or censor and look at things such as what is my current disk space? What was the RAM? What is my CPU utilization? How many services are running? What are some recent, you're seeing it's pulling in right now live in real time, recent application crashes. Obviously, you can kill, start, run process. This is that now we're really interacting with data in that construct of truly real time to that highest degree. Whereas well, we're able to even query sensors and so on and so forth. I'll let this load. I pre-staged one here so you can see this. I can deploy software packages, was brought up earlier. I mean, I can add all of those other functions from an integration perspective, but I might even want to simply just query through some of the running processes, service details, uh, versions, BIOS version. You can pretty much, I like to say the world's your oyster for what kind of introspection you want to do. But that also tees you up well for the agentic, the AI-based conversations as well moving forward because you're enacting a workflow there to do it. And we're all still staying within the same ServiceNow construct. So
Yeah, I like to
I
say
I
for
would,
your for your service desk there, I mean, you can take your top actions, right? Top tickets, put
yep.
those on an
Mhm.
action button or the top sensor data they need, and they don't have to leave the console. They can stay in the same tool and get all that in real time.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And the other big thing is when you're doing this kind of like live, triggering of actions against things, especially when we start thinking about the AI pieces, right? Doing that against potentially stale data, even more than 24 hours old, right? Is a potential concern and a risk, right? So having the real-time data directly from the Tanium endpoints that's pulling that in right now, and then you can go and trigger against it what you know to be real, accurate, real-time data. That's a big positive. So,
Well, and I
Yeah.
think, Mike, even on top of that, I think when you look at data that's, 24 hours old, we can call it stale. But when we're, and we'll get into this a little bit, but when we're thinking about agentic frameworks and agents making decisions on their own, even a few minutes can be stale.
yeah.
Especially when you're thinking about things from like a security perspective or from an IT ops perspective.
Hmm.
Something could have changed in the last 5 minutes, and it could be a
Yeah.
critical change. And so the ability to actually call out and say what's happening at this very second, not service graph ran an hour ago, the CMDB is up to date, but what is happening at this very second I think is
Hmm.
really critical when you start to have AI agents that are saying, what decision do I need to make?
Yep.
Right.
Great point.
Well, I know that we could definitely dive, especially for this audience and anyone listening in. Definitely, I know we're going to dive in a lot deeper here. I see some
Hmm.
questions coming in. Just as a quick high-level overview as well for a couple of things that I'll mention is that we run in conjunction with ServiceNow. We run ServiceNow Success Clinics just to help our customers get enabled, to help them understand the outcome, to connect those dots. We're also going to be hosting. So if you're obviously you're ServiceNow, so you understand that there's the knowledge environment. We're at Knowledge and love going to Knowledge. And I missed, the Beers with Engineers at Knowledge this year is just one. I think this next year I'm definitely going to be first in line. I didn't get in because you guys had way too many people there. So I was like on a wait list and no one wanted to. Anyway, so we also have, and we'll be doing this from a Success Clinic perspective live at our conference in November. It's called Converge. So Tanium will be doing that. ServiceNow folks will also be there, but we'll be running some hands-on and lab-based clinics there as well, just to help customers enable themselves on some of those outcomes. So feel free, and we can put those links in if you guys would like to join those later as well. But just hopefully feeding you information that you may not have known was there before. So
Love it. Thanks, Jeremy. So here's the thing. There's a ton of questions that are coming in around the Service Graph connector and kind of how it ingests data and what that looks like and the structure. So I think it's a good time to have Will kind of dig into the Service Graph connector and what he showed. And then if we don't hit these questions that are in the chat, we'll make sure to circle back to them in the Q&A at the tail end.
yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
100%. In the meantime, since I'm about to kind of start showing some stuff, just a little technical note, Mike, if I don't know how to do this off the top of my head. If there's a way we could let the Tanium guys actually type stuff in chat, for some reason, at least Ashley's having an issue, like
Okay.
it's sending chat messages to everyone, which is
Yeah.
weird because our attendees are able to. So I'm not sure why panelists wouldn't be able to, but if you want to kind of poke at that a little bit, I think we are doing pretty well, thanks to Chris primarily, who's answering a lot of the questions in the chat.
Yeah.
So we're not getting buried under unanswered questions so far.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll call on Dr. Nanda for the moment, right, Chris? So keep at it, buddy. Appreciate you being in there. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. All right. So yeah, so as we kind of alluded to, that foundational kind of entry point or point of connection between Tanium and ServiceNow is the Service Graph connector for Tanium. And so I'm just going to kind of give a little harbor tour of that and just show kind of the spots to look when you're putting that into your environment and kind of how to make sure that your data is flowing as you would want it to. And then also where you can apply any tweaks that you might want to, because the whole thing, that's kind of one of the benefits of building the Service Graph connector construct, is that it uses a standard framework called Workflow Data Fabric, previously called Integration Hub. And so this is just a capability built on top of that out-of-the-box platform framework to talk to Tanium, say, hey, give me a bunch of data, and then to transform that data so that the way Tanium thinks of it translates over to if you're familiar with the ServiceNow Common Services data model that kind of says, here's what tables everything goes in, and here's how they are related to each other. So that's what provides that linkage and kind of translates between the Tanium taxonomy and the ServiceNow taxonomy without the users having to do anything other than install the software and, put in some parameters and start seeing data populate their CMDB. So that all starts with, I'm just kind of preloaded some tabs so we don't have to wait too long. I just went under Service Graph connectors and there's a Tanium section. And then I just kind of brought up tabs for each of these key items. I did skip the setup just because the setup experience actually across all Service Graph connectors is converging on something called Service Graph Connector Central, which is a new view that's being added to our CMDB workspace. So that's definitely best practice at this point, is to go to Service Graph Connector Central to set up any of your connections. It's a much more kind of fluid user experience. And so once you've kind of gone through that, you're going to end up with these scheduled imports. And again, we kind of talked about there's, kind of getting your baseline data in, which generally like Service Graph connectors are going to run about once every 24 hours. You can crank that up based on your own kind of needs. And we just do advise to do that in a methodical way so that you don't set it to run every minute and you're importing, especially at the scale Tanium operates. You probably don't want to be, querying it every minute to pull in up to the minute data necessarily, not for CMDB. And so just by way of example, the kind of key import that occurs most often is called the Tanium hardware and software import. And this is really just a scheduling wrapper that goes around the next piece, which is called the data source. And so this just provides some scheduling information about a specific data source, which is named Tanium hardware and software. And so now we'll go and look at that. And that's really where things start happening. So the data source, depending on the Service Graph connector, you'll see a data source either just natively go immediately to the workflow data fabric, or if it needs to do some massaging ahead of time, like this one does, it's got a little bit of script code, which then kind of moves into calling the workflow data fabric piece. So that's what's happening with Tanium. There's actually a script include on the ServiceNow side, which kind of sets the table and then transfers control over to this, what we call a data stream, which is within Flow Designer. Again, it used to be iHub ETL. Now we kind of call all of that stuff workflow data fabric because that really kind of describes what's going on more accurately. It's pulling data through kind of native API calls so that your ServiceNow platform can put those attributes, put that data in the right place within CMDB or non-CMDB tables as applies to the particular use case. And so again, this is all just out of the box capability. The setup basically consists of pointing it at your Tanium endpoint and providing an applicable credential. I did see a quick question in the chat. Somebody was asking out, what if I have multiple instances of Tanium? This does support that. It's got a multi-instance capability where you basically just define multiple connections and it will kind of just automatically kind of fan out those data inputs and those schedules so that they will operate against those multiple Tanium, those multiple instances or tenants of Tanium. I'm not sure what you guys call them when somebody's got multiple kind of Tanium environments, but we've got full support for that within the Service Graph connector.
And Will, coming from ServiceNow, but here at Tanium now as the ServiceNow individual with Tanium, I still call them instances, but actually, that's just the vernacular I'm used to. So.
Hey, just really quickly, I want to call out a question that Chris had. This is a total aside, right? But I think it's a really, really important one because I have been getting this question a lot recently, and it's coming in from lots of different places. And part of what I'm seeing is, so the question is, do API calls from the Service Graph connectors consume iHub transactions? And because Integration Hub is counted as a transaction-based billing model, right? Normally we try and stay away from billing questions here, but I think this is kind of an interesting little nitpick. So,
Can I answer with you, Mike?
yeah. So they show up in your Integration Hub transaction consumption reports, but to my knowledge, to this point, everyone I have asked this question has told me that they do not count against your consumption.
They do not. So the adage to this on the service store.servicenow.com, if you look at the dependencies and the requirements, which I was on earlier, if it's a service graph and it's bringing in data, it is not a transactional model like the old orchestration or iHub components where you're having and consuming blocks of those transactions.
Yeah.
It does, however, on the IT operations management side, if you are populating a new configuration item within the CMDB, it will be a component of a subscription unit, or also known as an SU if it's being created net new. But then
Yeah.
again, we dive in and can pontificate on the IRE rules and everything else, right, Will, which we did yesterday to some degree. I hope that was helpful. And if I misspoke, please let me know, Mike and Will. But it's not iHub consumption; it's ITOM population CMDB consumption.
Correct. And the key thing and why this is confusing is because it does show up on your iHub transaction consumption reports, right? So that's a confusing thing. The word I'm hearing is we're trying to actually get that cleaned up. So just so you know, that's where the confusion is. Sorry for the derail, Will. Go for it.
No worries. So the kind of the last stop that data makes on its way from an external platform like Tanium through a service graph connector is the ETL process, the extract, transform, load. And this is, it's built on the back of the kind of fairly venerable transform map construct within ServiceNow. It's just a lot easier to work with and a lot more performant in that they introduced the concept of concurrent import sets and what they call the robust transform engine. And so this is where you can, for example, see a sample of what kind of data is coming in from that external source. So from a debugging perspective, we'll see customers leaning on this if, they're like, we've got this data in Tanium, it doesn't seem to be making it to the CMDB correctly, in which case they'll go here to take advantage of the fact it gives you that simple. Yeah. So here's an example. It basically takes 10, like the first 10 records, give an import set and shows you in tabular form, here's what's coming in. And so the attributes that just have regular names are the things that are coming in from the source. And then in the case of a service graph connector, because it's all been pre-curated and you can run it out of the box, you may see some attributes with a lowercase u in front of them. And that indicates that that's data that's been kind of translated in some fashion from the source system over to kind of ready it so it can be mapped to corresponding piece of the ServiceNow table structure. And you can actually kind of click in here and you can actually see directly, in this case, this service graph connector is pretty robust, pretty mature. So it actually has, in some cases, where it's running some script code against that kind of raw data to kind of mold it into the form it needs to take in order to go to the next phase, which is actually mapping it to the CMDB. And that's also available via this same user interface where you select CMDB classes to map the source data into. So in this case, since we're talking endpoints, that's primarily computer class and then subordinate classes like file systems, software installations, etc. And so we can drill into one of those classes and see how, just see visually the data starts as this attribute coming from Tanium, and here's where it ends up on the CMDB side.
So just a quick aside here. This is why it's always a head scratcher when people say, oh, I'll just build my own integration to populate the CMDB. I mean, not that you're incapable of doing it. Absolutely, people could, right? But do you really want to own all this like code and transformation capabilities and constantly be managing and updating all this stuff as source data changes and target data structure intention changes? Like, whew, no, thank you. Like, hooray, somebody went and did this for me. This is good stuff.
I think that management side is so big, Mike. Building something that works once is sometimes difficult. That's not the most difficult part. It's every 6 months when there's a platform update, and now you've got to change it. And now you have a new class. And now the person who built it has left for another company. And who is going to maintain this? The building is easy or easy-ish. It's the maintenance 2 years later of why did we do this?
What have we said forever, Mike, working together as long as we have? Just because you can doesn't always mean that you should.
Yep. And yet another one here is if writing software is not your core business model, don't do it. Just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. Definitely through my career have gotten pulled into the build versus buy rabbit hole, and it the just absorbing that technical debt, and just on a personal level, like there's been times when I've written something, just like quick to get it done, and it ends up being this thing that I own for the entirety of my tenure at that company, just because that's how that stuff that's how that stuff plays out, right? So it's really great to have such mature, robust, steadily maintained integration points. And this is just one of them. This is the one, this one is kind of created and built by ServiceNow, whereas we've got a whole suite of other resources that Tanium actually actively maintains and provides to their customers. And just a quick shout out, I was looking at the SDK, and we're going to include some links specifically to that, because that lets you literally, kind of build on those base capabilities and get, as if you really want to kind of get your hands dirty, that SDK lets you do that. It lets you create whatever kind of integrations you want. And in fact, the other kind of higher order Tanium integrations are built on that same SDK. So, and it's all transparent. So you can see what the existing out of the box stuff is doing. If you do need to tweak it, you've got that capability. Just definitely think hard before you absorb, before you shoulder that technical debt. But
Yep. Agreed. Sorry, I've derailed us. Continue.
No worries. That really sums up the service graph connector. I think, Brandon, you were going to talk a little bit about kind of taking the real-time data and taking action on it.
Yeah, so I wanted to pivot a little bit as to, I think what we've really been focused on and doing a really good job in kind of the early parts of this conversation is really, the foundations of how Tanium and ServiceNow start to work together, and the reason that we're bringing in a lot of this data. And I think for Tanium customers, ServiceNow is a very different sort of way to think about the data, because in Tanium, everything that we do is real time. And so our customers are used to saying, well, I want information about all my machines, and I'm not going to go run a static report. I'm going to ask them, and I'm going to get all that information. Whereas ServiceNow, you're storing that information, but what we don't have is we don't have any insight into the business, because we're just pulling data off of endpoints in real time. We don't understand users and approvals and managers and the business side that actually makes things work. And so it's been really interesting as we've started to bring these integrations in and go through this partnership with ServiceNow, seeing the use cases as they develop. And I think what we started with the Service Graph Connector, let's ensure that we can just bring all of the data into ServiceNow the way that ServiceNow expects it. And then we have integrations into things like vulnerability response and security incident response and SAM Pro, where there's tables that are really staged inside of ServiceNow that says this is what a vulnerability looks like. And if you're going to patch a vulnerability, it needs to be associated with a change request. And this is kind of the defined process. But there's so much data that Tanium has and things that Tanium can do that there aren't out-of-the-box workflows. They're just simply not built into the ServiceNow platform at this time. And so I think that's been really, really exciting as we've started to look forward, particularly around the agentic framework that ServiceNow is coming out with and AI agents, and saying, what's sort of the next evolution of this?
Yeah.
And I think I've used this analogy many, many times, so people in the audience may have heard it, but I think a lot of the ways that people have sort of perceived AI agents today is similar to using Google Maps to ask for directions. You're using AI agents that are summarizing incidents, and they're looking at all of your records in your CMDB, and they may be taking some more recent data. But when you ask Google Maps for directions, streets aren't changing minute to minute. It's going to pull in some traffic information, but it's going to tell you, here's where you need to go. And as you're on that journey, if you miss a turn, it's going to redirect you. I think when we start looking at, what does real-time data actually mean when it comes to like agentic workflows, we're thinking about this more like a self-driving car. Google Maps might say you need to turn right at an intersection, but a self-driving car needs to know, is now the right time to turn right? Is the light green? Is somebody blocking the way? Or if a car starts turning and somebody pulls out in front of it, or a kid goes running in front of the car, self-driving car has to be responding in real time to say, even though I started this turn, I now need to stop. I need to make a corrective decision. And so that's really where I think it started to get really exciting thinking about Tanium and ServiceNow together is, let's make sure that the data inside of ServiceNow is always up to date. But what about when you have AI agents that need to be able to say at this very second, am I making the right decision? And once I make that decision, is it still the right decision? If I start patching something and all of a sudden we're getting a bunch of performance spikes, I need to stop that patch. I'm not going to just continue and say, well, this is a workflow and the workflow says to patch. I need to be able to understand what is happening. So all that to sort of preface to say, what we're really looking at is how do we ask for any data and take any action and not define what that looks like. I think that it's really appropriate to define, what a vulnerability looks like. And it's really appropriate to define what is a patching process. But there's so many other types of actions that you may not be able to build all these workflows. And I think the agentic AI and agentic framework is really, really exciting to kind of take this to the next level. So all I wanted to show is kind of how we're viewing the ability to ask anything and do anything without defining what that should be, without putting up guardrails and saying, this is how this process should work for everybody. Because as we all know, every customer is different in how they operate, in their maturity of their data, and in the processes. I think there's a lot of desire to automate people processes, and those people processes are very different for any organization. So what we have done is there's a number of, again, predefined actions that are based around things like SAM and CSD and our service graph to be able to get views and refresh API tokens. But what we also did is we have this action that we have created actually as part of the SDK. So I know I was just mentioned our SDK that our integrations are all really built off of. And as part of this action, it's just trigger an action. It's not really defined. So what I could do is if I select an endpoint as part of this, and I come in, here's all the different actions. There are thousands of these actions predefined by Tanium, and then these actions can also be created by our customers. But something like clear Teams cache. This action now, if I define an endpoint and I have this package, what it's going to do is it's going to reach out to this endpoint in real time, and it's going to tell it, you need to clear the Teams cache. The reason that we have this really broad action, though, is think about embedding this inside of a workflow. You might have sort of a self-service workflow where somebody comes in and says, Teams isn't working for me. And so what it can do is it can actually say, well, we're going to run through these predefined actions. But the next step of this is, what if you just gave AI agents inside of ServiceNow the ability to run any of these actions? So a user comes in and says, Teams isn't working on my machine. And the AI agent says, well, I'm going to go through and I'm going to figure out what's happening. So what I'm going to actually start with is I'm going to ask Tanium a question. And Tanium has a natural language processing built into our platform where you could ask any question. So you could literally give an AI agent the ability to say, is Teams working properly? It could send this question to Tanium, and Tanium will report back at this very second, here's what's going on with Teams. Here's what we're seeing with Teams. Here's the version of Teams. Here's the processes and the system services that are running behind it. And then an AI agent may say, well, it appears that the cache on Teams seems to be very, very large. So what I'm going to do is, I know that I have the ability to run any kind of action. I'm just going to go through and I'm going to run that clear Teams cache. And this can all happen completely autonomously. And so there are a bunch of different actions that we have defined in here. There's all these different workflows, but I think the really exciting thing for us is just this ask a question and trigger an action. Because not only could you bring this into a workflow that you have defined, or bring this into a subflow inside of ServiceNow, or somebody could launch it as an agent, or they could launch it as part of a service request flow, or it could be triggered anyway. But these are things that AI agents inside of ServiceNow have the ability to leverage as well. And so I think that's the really exciting thing that we're starting to look at is, AI agents in ServiceNow, they can see everything that's in ServiceNow. But there's a lot of data that may not be sitting inside of ServiceNow. It changes minute to minute. And you don't necessarily want to be storing that inside of ServiceNow, but you want your AI agents to be able to leverage that and to ask, what is happening at this very moment? Am I still giving you the right recommendation? And as I start to take action, is this the right action? And so I think when we're looking at, the future of kind of real-time data inside of ServiceNow, this is really exciting for us because the amount of data that we can bring into store in ServiceNow is awesome. But I think when you're thinking about agentic workflows in the future of AI, it's really pulling data from all these other sources in real time to give you the right recommendations and take the right actions without any sort of intervention.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to be one of the big boons that the agentic stuff provides is you're now just making the ability to get that data and make sense of it and then take action accessible to such a larger community within your organization. Because usually, you don't have to know how to make a REST call anymore. You don't have to know it's like even beyond, our low code, no code platform is pretty good. You still have to kind of understand the data, how the data is laid out, what data to ask for, like what the field name is, what attribute is. Now you can just go into Agent Studio and, like you said, just craft a natural language question and then natural language instructions as to what to do with the answer to that question. And yeah, under the covers, at some point, somebody does have to make the connection that, this flow designer action, that's actually going to be in ServiceNow parlance, that becomes a tool for an AI agent to use. But once that's set up, it's reusable and you can empower so many more people to take advantage of the automation that these platforms are capable of. I think it's really just going to be quite amazing.
I think that's the really exciting thing for us is Tanium's a very technical platform. And so I think Jeremy had mentioned this, if we have a customer with 10,000 employees, they may have a few dozen logins to Tanium, but they have 10,000 people who are logging into ServiceNow. And so ServiceNow, the extensibility of you have flows and you have Now Assist and you have your employee portals and you have the agents and you have the operations workspace that everybody can use these. And like you said, Will, you don't have to know how everything is actually working behind the scenes. You don't have to be technical enough to code this. But imagine if your employees can come in and they can interact with Now Assist and say, hey, something's going on. And Now Assist has the ability to say, well, I'm going to go find whatever I need, whether it's stored in ServiceNow. I'm going to look at historical tickets. I can see what's happening on your machine at this very moment. And then do you want me to go ahead and try and fix it? So deflecting the tickets, but also giving employees the ability to feel like they're part of the process. And I think that's something that's really exciting because you don't have to know how a workflow is defined, and it could change based off of different users and based off of what's happening on their specific machines. And so just bringing kind of the extensibility that's already in the platform and just opening up so broad in the ways that you can actually access this.
And you heard me say this earlier, right, Brandon and team, which was we hear DEX all the time, and DEX is fine, but it's terminology matters. Where we meet the customer where they are, what is the experience they have? And Brandon, you just put like a perfect exclamation point on that, which is I'm in ServiceNow. I'm requesting software from ServiceNow. I'm getting notifications from ServiceNow. I want something to be done quickly. That's the Tanium aspect of it. That is So DEX can mean a multitude of things, but it's really where is the experience of the customer is engaged at. You just brought it up, 10,000 versus 12. I want to cover the 10,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
So
Yeah. Sorry. We're over time, Mike. We're having fun. Sorry, buddy.
it's good. It's wonderful.
Happens all the
Uh,
time.
it's just how we do. So here's what we'll do. We'll pivot and we'll hit these couple of questions that we have not gotten a chance to get to yet. And then we'll pause the recording and open it up for any and all questions and comments. So, that being said, let's talk about Joe's question. We're seeing a large amount of IP address records being created from some end user devices as they bounce around DHCP. In one case, there's up to 54 IPs associated with a device. Is there a recommended cleanup process or something misconfigured within the connector to help correct this behavior? Do we have a thought around that, or is that, hey, we need to dive in deeper with a ticket?
I
We
guess
may need to dive in deeper on that one with the tickets.
Mhm.
It's something that I think is going to be, unique to every customer. But one thing that we've felt very strongly is that we don't want to delete anything. And so, from our perspective, and I think this is how the service graphs work, is that the problem people run into is okay, we have too much data. There's too many IP addresses, and there's definitely rules that could be set around that. But we intentionally tried not to remove anything, knowing that you may want that data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And
once it gets on the ServiceNow side, you do have some tools around CMDB health and currency of data where like, IP addresses are a related record. So if an IP address hasn't been updated for a certain period of time, you can certainly, once they're in CMDB, you can put policies in place to clean that up. But obviously at the end of the day, you probably want to avoid getting that, stale data in there. But it kind of depends. If it's coming in, like if Tanium it just keeps saying, hey, here's my IP address, and it's coming in on Service Graph Connector, then yeah, you may have to address that via like a policy on the service side that just says, hey, these IPs are stale, and we provide policy driven ways to automatically clean that up. But yeah, pursue that. I would say pursue that on both sides with the teams, your platform teams from both sides, and between the two of us, we'll get it straightened out.
yeah. So there's the other one, and we've seen this question come up in a couple of different formats, and it's a little bit of an elf in the room, so let's just attack it. ACC versus Tanium. And one of the things that I don't think we've even talked about up front so far is that ACC can run patterns for like other more deeper dive discovery. That's not something that Tanium does today, to my knowledge. But other than that, I can't really think of a reason why you would use ACC versus Tanium for endpoint management. Am I missing something?
I, I think that when we look at Tanium and ServiceNow, this is probably the highest overlap area
Hmm.
because you have two agents, and I think anybody rightfully is concerned. I don't want more agents. Give me the agent of agents. Let's reduce this.
Yeah.
Um, I think Tanium's unique architecture is able to gather data and take action at scale faster than any other agent that's out there. Um,
Hmm.
but it's a broad agent that is really built for bringing data into Tanium's platform. Um, ACC, as you had mentioned, Mike, being able to actually monitor like web traffic and start to map out some of the different services, getting off of the endpoints and looking at the things that they're connected to is something that we just simply don't do well through our agent today. We're concerned about things that have an operating system that we're monitoring on. Um, the other side is, I think Jeremy had mentioned, DEX is probably the big crossover that we get. Um, Tanium can notify end users. I think most agents on the market can send a notification. You could send something like a survey, but it's not purpose built for ServiceNow the way that ACC is. Being able to interact with Now Assist, being able to launch and see knowledge articles, being able to check the status of an instance or create a change request. ACC is purpose built for users inside of ServiceNow. And so I think for all of our customers who are using ServiceNow, we never advise like you should not use ACC because there are things that ACC is going to do. If you are a user in ServiceNow, that it is so well built for ServiceNow and not having to log in and jump through a bunch of tabs.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an either or, but certainly on
It's an
the
ampersand.
the broad
Yeah.
spectrum of actions,
It's an
Tanium, that's what we're
ampersand.
built for.
It's an
Yeah.
ampersand. We
Yeah.
since coming on board here at Tanium, Brandon, you and I have had this dialogue quite a bit. Mike, Will, you and I have had the dialogue. Ashley, we've had the dialogue. It's interesting to see where customers actually use both.
Mhm.
And they use the IRE like you were showing, Will, right? They use the IRE. It's like you have these great tools that are purpose built to do a specific, take the technology out of it, understand where that process becomes. Can one do more than the other? Potentially. But having both even sometimes in the same environment, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, then again, we that someone could beget the argument of agent bloat to a degree. And then but leveraging even both of those, you start to rationalize all of those other agents out because where I think that becomes critical is the security, the incidents, the vulnerability, the response, that other aspect of it that is often missed that requires secondary and tertiary agents to also perform those additional functions. So, anyway, I'll stop on
Yeah.
my soapbox and pontificating for that one.
So another question that was semi-tied to this, she's asked, does ACC discover other entities like cloud service resources, PaaS, SaaS, cloud storage? So not necessarily. But the ACC agent has the ability to do what we call pattern execution. So we can ServiceNow platform can actually push down a pattern to the agent to do things like service mapping and some other very specific kind of targeted discovery components on that local agent. So that's about as close as it gets. Now, if you want to deploy ACC on an infrastructure as a service, VM, whatever, you can do that. But the agent client collector itself, the actual installed agent, won't do PaaS resources or other things like that.
But that's as part of ITOM licensing oftentimes. Like you guys have connectors into a lot of those paths and sat like it's not
Yeah.
necessarily an agent, but that's the beauty of ITOM is all the things you can't put an agent on. There are ways to get that data in.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Yeah. The agent that I was talking about is specifically just one small subset of the ITOM suite, and we can find all of that other stuff in the ITOM suite.
And one of the
Um,
things, Mike, as you're looking at the next question, that when we
mhm.
were really working together with you and Will recently,
Mm.
we're giving you access when Will was inside demoing inside of
Yeah.
ServiceNow, right? Well, you guys both on the line. This is just gory details that
Yeah,
like the
right.
director's cut behind the scenes. You're like, wait, the Tanium agent is installing on our machine and it's just running in the background because it knew
Yep.
you. I mean, it's because ServiceNow has to, you know what I mean? It knew. So it already started to do its job without interference and it didn't really add any bloat. You're just like,
Mm.
cool, yep, you go do your thing.
Yep. Yep. It popped up and said, "Hey, it's time to install the Tanium agent. Here you go." Right. It was pretty humorous.
That was funny.
Uh, yeah. Perfect timing. All right. And then I don't know that we have a stat. I haven't seen a stat around the percentage of Tanium customers that have ServiceNow. I'll ask the Tanium guys. Do you guys have that
More
stat?
than 90%. And I saw this question come in from Ashish. I don't have an exact number, like specifically on customers, but we have asked most of our customers as in the last 2 years as part of this journey, reaching out around features and capabilities. And we found that more than 90% of our customers are currently leveraging ServiceNow, which especially when you look at the enterprise side and some of the larger customers, I think, throw a dart at a Tanium customer, they're using ServiceNow.
Yeah, it's a pretty darn good chance.
Yeah.
And then the next one that came in was around service relationships and service discovery. Do we need to do ACC? So you don't need to do ACC. Service discovery is we could do an entire show on service mapping and building those service maps out and how that all looks. The agent client collector is just one of the capabilities that we have in our tool belt in order to do that. And so um, it's doing service discovery doesn't necessarily force you into using ACC, nor does it preclude you using the Tanium agent. So they're kind of apples and oranges, and we can bring a lot of different tools to bear there. Okay. I think we got through all the Q&A. Did we get all of the questions out of the chat? And it's been going by so fast. You guys have been on top of it. I think we got them all.
I think so.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that being said, here's what we'll do. I'm gonna officially thank the Tanium crew for joining us today. It's been absolutely fantastic having you guys here. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the Tanium Tech Talks shows. This has been a great collaboration, and I really appreciated it. We're gonna go ahead and shut off the recording now, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And if anybody wants, we'll hang out for a little bit longer and answer. This is your time to ask us all of the things.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Will. Thank you, ServiceNow.
Yeah, thank you for having us.